Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where I will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships and how to overcome them so that you can move through your pain and get to the kind of healthy relationships you want, need, and deserve. I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational and informational, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Also, due to the nature of the podcast, some of the information presented on the show can be sensitive to some of my listeners, so please note that listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. How are you guys doing? I have missed you guys. I know I haven't done a podcast in a little while, and I have been tired, busy and tired. And not to say that I'm not thinking about the podcast or even feeling a little bit guilty when I don't do one, but, it's just kind of, I don't know what it is about this time of the year. And you guys let me know if you experience it too. But the time of the year, this time of the year, time is just like gone. It's like, oh, I feel like I need 2 or 3 more versions of myself because the days just come and go so fast. And we're already in October, which is Halloween season. And this is, I don't know about you guys, but it's my favorite time of the year. I love fall. I love crisp, cool air, and in the Bay Area, we don't really have a true fall, as I like to call it. I was born and raised on the East Coast. So, in the East Coast, you have a true fall where there's like a drastic change in the weather and the leaves turn and it's like crisp and cool. And you turn on your furnace or you start your fireplace. And so you have the smell of firewood kind of going throughout the house. I'm a country girl too. So we always had nice, fires, and I have a fireplace now. So it'll be nice to turn on the fireplace if we ever get to that point here, in Northern California. But anyhow, while I've been away, don't think I haven't been busy and that I haven't been planning more shows, because I certainly have been, as well as other wonderful, exciting things that are in the works. And I can't wait to share with you guys when those things are ready to share. Sometimes I get ahead of myself and I say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And it doesn't really come to fruition on the timeline that I'd like it to, because other things that are more pressing come up in the mix. So I did learn my lesson to release things when they're ready to be released. Anyhow, today's show is, a listener had emailed me, a request a while back about doing an episode on self-love. And I've done many shows on self-love and healing through narcissistic abuse. I feel like I've done at least one a year. And I may link those in the description box if we can find them, because the show is 6 years old. So we've done, I think, I may have only released a couple hundred episodes, but I think we've done, I probably have done upwards of 300 plus. And so whenever we have to link and tag things, we got to go back and search through, which my lovely assistant, Deanna, does that. And she's great about doing that. So what we'll do is I'll have her try to link a few of those episodes in the description box. So folks, that really want to get on their self-love kick can kind of go back and listen to some of the older episodes on self-love and healing. And this, what I'll do today is I'll do I'll do self-love today, but I want to kind of do a spin on it. I want to, this is tough love in terms of self-love. So it's, quick, dirty, and straight to the point, no holds barred, maybe a little profanity sprinkled in there. I don't usually like to use it, but, sometimes when you get a little passionate about things, you might throw it in there. Not sure yet. But anyhow, let's jump right in. And I like to go based upon my experience as a therapist, my journey from healing from narcissistic abuse, as well as what just what my clients are dealing with, as well as like what my experience in terms of dealing with narcissists in the professional setting, and just education, all that kind of good stuff. Just I like to draw from a combination of things. And the first lesson in self-love is to and I want to be pretty direct here. I think for people, especially for people who have been raised in narcissistic families, and you kind of been dealing with narcissists all your life, or toxic people, I think this one is going to be tougher, but it's going to be life altering should you do that. But I think the first lesson that I want to emphasize is stop allowing disrespect. And I'm 44 years old now, so I think this is a lesson that, I continue to have to learn, and I'm getting a lot better at it. And so now I have a zero tolerance for disrespect. And this is something that I work with my clients on. And I think I have shared with you guys before, especially in prison, working in a prison system has taught me a lot. And, what inmates will do is, or, just not even necessarily inmates will do, is they'll test you. People will test you with little things that they know that they're not supposed to ask you for or do or anything like that, but they'll test you to see what you will allow and what they can get away with, right? And they'll constantly push the envelope until they get bigger and bigger and bigger things, until they get their ultimate goal, which is total manipulation over you. And they get everything that they want. And there's quite a few staff that sort of fall sucker to this, as I like to call it, right? And you have staff that get arrested or walked off their job, or whatever, every day, every single day, in corrections. So you see it all the time, where it's like, you got played. But it happens. And this is why, when, because people allow disrespect even on a small level. And what I talk about with my clients is, you need to stop doing that on any level. And you need to, if you don't know what disrespect is, you need to look it up. You need to look up the definition, and then you need to figure out for yourself what is disrespectful to you, period, plain and simple, across the board. And you need to work that out with your therapist and have some conversations. But you need to decide what is disrespectful to you. And what I mean by that, and why I'm being so direct about that, is because sometimes when you get in relationships with people and you really want to like that person, and you really want it to work out, and you really want you really have this goal in mind. Maybe we're going to get married, we're going to have this life, and we're going to live happily ever after. You're willing to move the goalpost on what is and what isn't respectful, simply because your objectivity is blurred, right? Or you have a fondness for this person, or you have this goal in mind that you really want to accomplish with this person. But what I'm telling you is, you need to have a standard precedent for what is disrespect to you. And you need to stand on that. You need to stand on it 10 toes down, because if you don't, you will get punked. In every single time. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be your children. It could be your parents. It could be the people that you work with. It could be anybody. But, people talk about boundaries, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And I think people kind of overuse that word, but they don't really know, like the work that entails behind boundaries. But I'm here to tell you, it's all about respect. It's a little word, but it's a big meaning. And you need to stand on, like, no, this is like, you need to respect my personal space. You need to respect my time. You need to, respect my body. You need to respect me as an individual. People learn very quickly who they can disrespect, right? And this happens all the time in like narcissistic families or narcissistic relationships. And So what tends to happen is, like, what will happen is someone will disrespect you, right? And you'll kind of people will create these stories and say, oh, well, this person probably acted this way because they've got their own trauma, and blah 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 blah, and they didn't mean that, and this and that. No, actually, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're playing you to see what they can get away with, right? And the way that you can be able to discern that and tell that is, normally what will happen, which people complain about and sort of get hyper fixated on when they're leaving a relationship with a narcissist, or when the narcissist has discarded them, is like they get caught up on how the narcissist that they were with treated them like crap, but the next person, they're sort of whining and dining, right? Or they're giving them a better version of themselves, and they can't really understand that. It's the same thing with parents too, right? When you have narcissistic parents, and they'll treat you like, you know, like, you know, scum on the bottom of their shoe, but then they have this other child over here that they treat better, right? And it's because they learn very quickly who they can get away with. There's a lot more at play than that, but that's kind of how that stuff starts to develop, right? And over time, right, they know that, if they continue to disrespect you and you continue to kind of carry on in the relationship, that person who is abusing you or mistreating you or taking advantage of you or exploiting you knows that they can do that and come back, and there's not going to be any sort of consequences. So you need to stop allowing for disrespect, one, and then two, you need to have consequences. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. So, if a person is disrespecting you even a little bit, you need to nip it in the bud. You need to stop it, and you need to not allow that. And you probably need to cut that relationship off to a certain degree, especially if um the relationship is overly disrespectful to you. Because here's what I've learned in my 44 years of life, and just as a therapist, and just as, someone who's worked with people who've been manipulated and abused and things like that. Once someone has become very comfortable with disrespecting you, you cannot walk it back. You cannot. I've never seen it done to this day. So what that means is, like, someone who has become disrespectful to you, condescending to you, and just sort of, been out of pocket in that entire relationship, they're not going to suddenly turn around and become this wonderful, loving, kind individual. And if they do, they're playing you for something, right? It's not genuine. I've never seen it, turn around where someone has been like, a complete nightmare, a completely disrespectful person, or, suddenly, and then turn around. So I had an issue with a friend recently where, a friend was, it was disrespectful, and it wasn't something that was overt, but it was covert, and I caught it. And it was actually myself and another friend that were disrespected. And I was talking to the other friend that also experienced the incident with me. And, I was like, for me, the consequence is, now that I see that disrespect, right? And now that I have this zero tolerance policy, for me, the friendship is done, because I know in my mind that you cannot walk it back. There was no reason for it. It was blatant disrespect, and I caught it. And that's all that I really need to experience. And so I shared this with another friend, or I was talking about it with another friend who had also experienced that same situation. And one of the things that she said to me, which is thinking that I used to have, was, well, I would talk to the friend about disrespecting me, like about, my experience of their disrespect. And, I would have a conversation about it. This used to be me. However, I don't agree with that anymore. And I think when you open the door to have these conversations about disrespect, you're giving what you're doing is you're setting yourself up to be talked out of your experience, right? Which is how gaslighting, that's part of why gaslighting works, right? And how people's perceptions can be changed. I know what I experienced, and I know that that's not okay. I don't need to have a conversation about it, right? Whatever was done, was experienced, that's all that I need to hear, right? Or that's all that I need to see or experience. I don't really need to hear any excuses or justifications or rationales as to why it happened. And that's also what I'm encouraging you to do. You don't want to give this person the opportunity to talk you out of your experience. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day why they disrespected you, or what they were thinking, or what kind of emotional state they were in. The point of the matter is it happened, and that's all you really know, and that's all the data that you need, and you need to decide right then and there if you're okay with it. And for me, I'm not okay with it, so the friendship is done. And it's not being a cutoff queen, it's understanding and being intentional about how you want to be treated. People need to know that there are consequences to mistreating you. If they don't know that, they're always going to view you as someone that they can abuse, mistreat, talk shit about, and get away with it and move on. And you need, if you feel like you don't deserve that, which I know I don't deserve that, then you need to stand on that, and then you need to carry yourself in that way, and you need to let people know real quick that that's not appropriate, and you don't have access to me. You don't have access to the things that come with me if that's how you want to move. You do not need to, and like my friend was saying, having this discussion and trying to understand, when people do that, people need to, for whatever reason, there is this like thing where people need to visually see themselves getting hurt before they have evidence, and you do not need to do that, right? And it's kind of like, domestic violence. I don't see any bruises, therefore it didn't occur. No, I know what I experienced, like emotional abuse, psychological, financial, all this other stuff is abuse too. I don't need to visibly have war wounds in order to have proof that that was done. I don't need to have that for myself in order to prove that what was done is done. So from here on out, zero tolerance policy for people who disrespected. So people who ghost and then come back, exes that mistreated you and then come back, and then family members who mistreat, and they kind of have this cycle where they feel the need to kind of, again, keep stuff going, talk junk about you, steal your money, have physically or sexually abused you during childhood, and now they want to have a relationship. Cut that shit off. I cannot stress it enough. You need to cut it off. If you don't, you then become part of the problem. You are re-victimizing yourself. You are setting yourself up to get abused over and over and over again. And I don't want to victim blame, but what I am saying is you have a responsibility to yourself to protect yourself and treat yourself well. You do not want to stay in victim mode and allow people to mistreat you over and over and over again. So, my pledge to myself, people that, again, and yeah, I would encourage you to get on this bandwagon, people that are mistreating me or have mistreated me in the past, I don't care to hear it. I don't care what the reasons are. No, we cannot start over. No, we cannot have a conversation. I don't care. And that's just kind of where it's at, because I am very intentional about that now. And you need to kind of do that too, and then too, that is the consequence. Consequences need to come with actions. If you don't take consequences, people know off the top that you're not serious and that you ain't going to be about nothing, right? Because, and you see it all the time. One of the examples that I like to use with my clients are toddlers, right? Toddlers that are acting out in the grocery store line, and you have those mothers that are there with them. Hey, Tommy, if you don't stop that right now, you don't put that candy down, I'm gonna count to three. I'm gonna count to three. And she counts to three. And what happens? Tommy is in that cart and he's screaming his head off. He's doing cartwheels, he's screaming bloody murder, and he's not stopping nothing, right? I hate you. He might even be screaming. He might have, turned up the ante, and she's still not doing anything. I'm warning you, I'm gonna count, and this and that and the other. And that child has already learned that I am not taking you seriously. You're a punk. That is what that kid has already learned. And I hate to say it like that, but that's kind of what that kid does. And the kid's not malicious or anything. And this could be like a 2-year-old, a 1.5-year-old. They're not malicious. They have just already learned that I'm not going to follow the order of what my parent says, and I'm not going to take them seriously because there's not going to be any real consequences. And you may see some kids that get out, have a temper tantrum. They may take their arm and sling things off the shelf, and they may really turn all the way up because they already know. They're already in their mind, in their 2-year-old mind, they're thinking, I'm going to see how far I can push this, right? And if I could go to the extreme and my mom ain't gonna do nothing, I'm gonna really turn this place out. And you see it all the time. You see it in the airport, you see it in the grocery store, you see it, just wherever. And it's poor parenting. It's poor parenting because kids learn right then and there that there's no consequences for their actions, or mom has said she's going to count and then something's going to happen and then nothing happens. And so I'm going to show her that, I don't give a damn about what you say. I'm going to really turn up and turn out now, and I'm going to embarrass you, and I'm going to get my way, and I'm going to have a tantrum, and I'm going to, whatever. And that's not necessarily that child's thinking, but that's exactly what's happening, right? And so consequences need to come with, disrespect, mistreatment, and things like that. And you don't need to talk about what the consequences are. So you don't need to go to that person and say, hey, you know what, if you don't do me right, I'm gonna leave in 5 days. You don't need to have those kind of conversations. And that's also something that people do all the time. They go to their partner and they have these conversations, like the disrespect has gotten so out of hand, and so now we're going to have a conversation, and I want to tell him what I think I want to do. No, don't do that. You just need to pack up your stuff. You don't really need to explain or talk about or tell them what you're going to do. You just need to, get your stuff. You need to show them more than you need to tell them, or you need to ask them or do anything, or try to get them to, get on the straight and narrow. You just need to be about that life. You need to pack up your stuff, and you need to moonwalk, break dance, walk, run, skip right on out of there, and they're going to see the consequences. And so that's what you need to do. You need to be about consequences, and you actually need to enforce them. And you need to be confident about setting your consequences and not be thinking like, oh my God, if I set a consequence, they're going to leave. Well, if they're not treating you right, they do need to go, right? They do need to be done. It does need to be over. And that's the thing, is like, I don't, because what's going to happen is they'll mistreat you from now until you're 85, but then they'll go over here with your siblings and they'll treat them better, no problem. Your siblings aren't going to necessarily get that same type of treatment, or the next partner that your lover has is not going to get that same type of treatment per se. And while it's not saying that they're going to be completely healed, or they're going to be like completely a knight in shining armor, what it is going to say is that that person will, sometimes people will mistreat you until they see a better option, or they see someone that they have to set, someone that has standards come along. And if you don't have standards, if you don't have just things, you don't have things set in place for how you want to be treated, people that have standards and have demands and do less oftentimes get treated better. And I'm sharing that with you because it took me a long time. And so you guys need to to take a look. And it happens all the time. You see it all the time. And instead of being obsessed with how so and so is going to treat the next person better, or how you didn't get that, maybe you need to tighten up and just not allow the same bullshit okey doke that you were allowing before. Sorry about that. I guess I'm getting a little unhinged, huh? Okay, so yeah, so just you need to tighten up on what's disrespectful. So, for me, talking badly about me, disrespecting my privacy, those are a few things. And just things like that. Things that are apparent disrespect, right? That's apparent disrespect. It's not like, oh, you did something trivial and now I feel disrespect. It's not that. It's usually like it's apparent relational aggression, it's relational disregard, things like that, that I just have a zero tolerance policy for. And I don't need to visually see myself getting hurt in order to move, or act accordingly, right? And then because people will waste your time, and they will tell you that they will get better if you sort of allow those conversations. I'm going to get better, I promise. Or they'll dismiss, or then they'll turn it back on you. They'll do all these things, right, to kind of justify their actions and justify, most importantly, not changing. So remember, disrespect can't be walked back. Not now, not ever. No, that's the general rule of thumb. So you need to act accordingly. And so 1, 2, and then 3, stop making space for things that do not matter, things, people, or whatever. Energetically, you need to focus on what does matter. So, like I said before, an ex that's moved on, that's none of your business anymore. And I know that can be a hard one to sit with, unless you have kids and, they have people around your children, that may be one thing. But like, that's a prime example where people are like, I'm going to stalk social media. I'm going to see what's going on. I'm going to, I need to know what they're doing. Do they miss me and all that? None of that is your business. And the only exception to that would be if you have children. But anything that you need to focus your energy on bettering yourself. You need to focus your energy on your mental health, your finances, and, just your life in general, and focusing on that and not what that other person is doing, or why they did this, or who got what, or, those kind of things. And so I would say, in terms of narcissistic abuse, you have so many people that are so obsessed with what their ex narcissist is doing. And, they become obsessed with like all these, narcissism videos. And trust me, I know I've been there and I know how it works. And, what happens now, especially now, you have a lot of when you try to oversaturate yourself with information and try to understand why he or she did this or did that, you have all these people that are, touted narcissistic abuse experts, but they're really not. They are, these coaches and things like that. But really what they're doing is they're parroting what they've heard, and they give people a lot of misinformation. They kind of come up with just random, whatever. They are, wanting to do all this coaching and making money, and they're not really proficient at what they're doing. I also have an issue, with a lot of male coaches who do this, right? Because, in my experience, male coaches are very predatory, and a lot of them are very much narcissists themselves. And so you have to be mindful that sometimes people who tout themselves to be an expert, or bona fide and a coach, or whatever capacity, even if they have a huge following, they're very predatory. um and so there's only a few people, which I think I've had some on this podcast, a lot of people that I really respect in this business on the podcast, others not so much. And there's people that I've actually brought on to the podcast that do not interview well. And so even though they may tout themselves to be an expert on TikTok or whatever, you can tell very quickly who 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 doesn't have the information, right? They can't spontaneously give you information. And this is probably first time I haven't had my notes where I'm just sort of talking. But even with me, like having like a note, it'll just be a couple of words. But for the most part, I string the pieces together. And so today I don't really have, I'm not really looking at notes. But people can, if you're not careful and you're not focusing on yourself and you're not doing the work that it takes to heal, you need to go to therapy and you need to heal. You don't need to cut corners around that. I cannot emphasize that enough. And healing does not take place overnight. If you've been in some serious abusive relationships, it's probably you need to work on yourself for the rest of your life. I'm biased, and then I think all people need to go to therapy and all people need to be doing the work weekly, even if they're, quote unquote, well adjusted, because I just think it helps to have the support to be talking to a licensed professional. I think, going to therapy should be like working out. And you guys know, I feel this way. I've said this before many times if you're a long time listener. If you're a first time listener, welcome. But that's kind of how I feel. It's like, you mentally need to work out every week. You need to talk to an objective, rational person. And there are so many resources for therapy now, even free ways to get even ways to get therapy for free. So nobody really has an excuse anymore as to why they can't go to therapy, why they can't hop online. You can do therapy from your home now. Right. So you don't even have to leave. You can do it, straight from your computer and virtually connect with somebody. So just, you need to work that out. Lastly, the one thing that I'll talk about is getting a hold of impulse control, specifically sex and self-regulation, self, money, and emotional regulation. People who have problems with emotionally regulating themselves more often than not have problems with money and sex, impulse control around sex. If you do not manage your emotions and act according to each situation, you will end up doing things that you have no business doing way before it's time and way before you know somebody. You have to be able to manage your emotions. And I've had some tips, some shows before on emotional and self-regulation before, but you definitely need to get your emotions in check. Like if you're an empathetic person, which I'm very empathetic, right? And I have a lot of therapists that watch my show, and just other, people that are very empathetic, of course. You need to learn how to manage your empathy. Every situation does not call for empathy. And even if you have empathy, it does not mean that you need to overly give or overly invest in that person, place, or situation, right? You need to manage that. Right. And you need to act accordingly. If you don't, you leave yourself very open, and that becomes success. You become susceptible to all types of things happening, none of which are good for you. So learn to manage that. If you can't manage your anxiety, then you need to learn how to manage that. And more often than not, your anxiety is probably telling you something that is going on that you really need to closely look at or examine within your life, right? So get a hold of your emotions, right? And I say this because people a lot of times with a narcissist, and narcissists know this very well, it's like, oh, you know, I can't, I know that this person isn't good for me, but the sex is good, or I really want someone that I can, that I'm comfortable with. We have history, connecting on a physical level. And so therefore I don't feel comfortable starting over with somebody else. Well, you know, having sex with somebody is not a reason to stay in a relationship. Um, get a vibrator, do something, manage that so that is not, you're not leading with that, and you're not leading yourself into a dangerous or a toxic situation because you want 5 minutes of comfort. You need to get real and you need to get control. And if you don't have it, you don't know how to get it, you need to talk with somebody to learn how to do that. I hear too many people saying that they don't have control over that. Same thing with finances. Money is an excellent servant, but a horrible master. You need to master your emotions with money, and you have to tell it what to do. If you let your money demons take control of you, that is all bad. And you know, I can't emphasize that enough. So you need to be in control. And money often goes hand in hand with narcissistic abuse, right? Because narcissists want sex and they want your money and they want what you can do for them, right? So those three things usually is primarily what narcissists are after, right? They're very opportunistic. And if you don't have control over it, whoops, guess what they do? They come in and they take control of it for you. So, safeguard that with your life. Don't lead with those things. Don't offer to help anybody, that is toxic or immature or they can't manage things themselves. People need to learn how to adult. You don't need to be a rescuer. So if you're thinking about rescuing somebody, you need to close your purse or close your wallet, and kind of, do that. And when I say rescue, I mean like, if you've got a grown child living at home that just can't seem to get a job or doesn't want to get a job, and they've become parasitic and they kind of expect you to take care of all their obligations, provided that there's no cognitive challenges, there's no reason why an able-bodied person can't get out and work, then that is what it is. So that's a prime example, that one which I see all the time, of people that are taking advantage. Now, if you have an arrangement with someone and you want to take care of them, then that's your business and you're perfectly, capable of making that decision. But you need to know that that's an arrangement which you agree to. You can't then say, this person is just using me for my money, blah, 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 and I don't like it. If you made the arrangement, you need to sit on that and kind of go with that. But if you didn't make the arrangement and you feel like people are just kind of mooching off of you and they're kind of coming to you when they want sex or when they want money or when they want something that you can do for them, if that's the only time your phone is ringing, you need to stop doing that. Okay. And so, manage that, because if you don't manage it, people will use those things, suck you dry, financially, use you for sex, and then, have complete disregard for you, and then, move on to someone else that has standards or won't sleep with them or won't give them a lick of money and then do what they're supposed to do. Trust me, I learned it the hard way. That people will just kind of, they will use you because they feel like, oh, she's a fool that I can use, or he's a fool that I can use. And they believe every sort of sob story I give them. And so I'll take that and then I'll go with this person over here that's not giving me anything or not doing anything for me. So you need to maybe think about your decisions a little bit more. So and lastly, what I'll say is, and I hadn't planned on this one, but I'm gonna throw this in there. If you have people in your life that struggle with any of the things that I just talked about, you don't, you may want to consider creating some distance between yourself and those people, right? Because if a person is sort of struggling and they're not invested in their own personal growth and they're not really changing and they're just kind of going in this negative cyclical behavior, but you're kind of moving on and that's not really who you are anymore, you may want to consider taking a step back from that relationship, because it just becomes so redundant. They're not interested in help and they're interested in staying a victim. And you have people that are like that. You have people that are bona fide being abused, but you also have people that are interested, that are invested in the victim narrative, and that's all that they're interested in. And so, you have to be careful of that because they're going to continue circling the drain, going with the same issues. And it's almost it can feel like, how you're like seventh grade and maybe you're surrounded by a bunch of second graders, right? That are kind of asking these very simplified questions, or they have a lot of things that they don't know, or they're kind of, they're difficult to manage. Um, and it's kind of like a very elementary type thinking, right? Well, when you're seventh grade and then you're second grade, your thinking is very different. Your skills in terms of mathematic, verbal, and just, interaction skills are very different. And you are going to see life different. You're going to experience things differently, and you're going to want to be surrounded by people who are focused on growth and healing mentality. And those that are stuck sort of circling the drain and not really interested in like doing things different or getting out of that, you may want to consider taking some distance from them, so that you can kind of move on and surround yourself with people who are at where you're at or better. And, they're kind of encouraging you to get better, right? And you're doing the work that it takes to get better, because otherwise, that can kind of keep you stuck. And if you're not careful, that can make you even backtrack to go back to problematic behaviors that you thought you had healed from. Because you hear it all the time. I have, patients that say that they're working on their healing with me. And then they get in this situation where they're maybe around some toxic family members, or, and, this situation happens where there's a whole lot of chaos and they're surrounded by all these toxic friends or family members. And guess what? They just kind of get caught up in the moment with these people, and they're sort of going back to old behaviors that they thought that they had let go of, and they couldn't understand, like, all of a sudden why, they've kind of gone backwards, or they've have all this guilt and shame around that. And so, the reason why is because, these people are taking you back. And so you may want to consider creating some distance. And one other thing I'll mention, while I'm thinking about that conversation, or while I'm having this conversation rather, is let go of shame and guilt. There's a lot of us out there who, when we've been in relationships with narcissistic or abusive people, we have taken people back. We've done things that we're not proud of. We have not been able to let go of an abusive relationship, or, maybe we have confronted someone that maybe they were, all kinds of stuff that we've done when we're invested in being with an abuser, right? Or because we don't know any better. And or you feel like, oh, I'm healing, and then I relapsed, or I made a poor judgment, and now I feel ashamed of myself. I feel guilty about what I've done. You need to let go of that. You need to let go of that, and you need to practice self-forgiveness. And you need to stop disrespecting, right? Stop disrespecting yourself in that way, because when you disrespect yourself, that is the highest form of self-betrayal. And other people will betray you if you constantly betray yourself. So, let go of shame and guilt. Be consistent with your promises to yourself. Don't disrespect yourself. Don't allow disrespect from anybody else. And you need to move on, and you say, you know what? I was there. This happened and this happened, and this is what I learned about myself. And I may have had a slip up. I'm talking with my therapist about it, and I'm invested in how to stand back up on my own 2 feet. And so that's where I'm at with it now. So you need to focus on that and practice self-love and self-respect every day, and be intentional about that. And any problems that you have with it, process that, with your therapist, journal about it, all the stuff. You guys know what to do. So, because I know my listeners are invested in their healing. I think, a lot of people have relationships with, their parents, friends, or, who they would, uh, think are their friends, your job, siblings or extended family, and where you are constantly being subjected to disrespect and chaos, and people just kind of showing up with you how they want to. And so and the relationship is trash. It drives you into sensory overload. You don't feel good when you're around that person. And energetically, I think it's something that, it's you definitely need to be cognizant of, and you need to pay attention to. Um, and so, I'll give you an example of, just how disrespect showed up in my last job that I worked in, and I worked with a team of people, and, there were several ways in which disrespect showed up. I think disrespect showed up when, I expressed to my job that, hey, we're really struggling here. Staff are really struggling, and we could use some support from leadership or management or more interventions. And like we're really stressed out and not able to perform our job adequately. It was a situation where we were a tight team of mental health professionals, and COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, there were a lot of people that didn't want to show up to work or didn't come to work, and just kind of took off for a couple months at a time, and like, COVID's here, I can't come to work. And so that really put a lot of stress on the people that were there. And the work accumulated, and so it just became so stressful, and it became scary too, because COVID started getting really serious straight away. And so it became scary to have to do all this extra clinical work and show up and see groups of people with where I work. And it seemed like it was apparent that, our concerns were falling on deaf ears. It was just like, you do the work, you jeopardize your health and safety, and you guys now have to do extra work because of people that aren't showing up. And so there was like this stress and this strain. There was no appreciation. There was no end in sight, and just became more and more cumbersome and stressful. And then, I had to bounce up out of there. And because it was like, okay, with a job especially, and I'm not telling you guys what to do, but for me, and I'm not knocking anybody who has a job or anything, but what I've learned over the years and working in the public and private sector is that a job will, push employees sometimes, and push them to the brink. And COVID, for a lot of companies and corporations, they found out what it was like to work on a skeleton crew. And when they found out, oh, we can still output the same amount of workload on a skeleton crew, so we can have a smaller number of employees, but still get the same amount or work or more work done. And so there was a lot of just like, they saw that as like an opportunity to both save money, but it put stress on people. And, working on a skeleton crew over an extended period of time is not realistic, and it's not healthy. But what I've learned is that corporations see me or you as disposable. So something could happen to me and I could be replaced. My job could be replaced tomorrow. But, if something happens to me, there's only one of me at home. There's only one of me that shows up, in certain places, right? And so I can't, I have to view myself as being valuable and not being disposable. And so that really sort of shifted my perspective, especially, just getting sick in general. So, um, it's something for you guys to really think about in terms of how to show up for yourselves. Same thing too, right? Where you may have dated someone, and that's another thing. Like, in the past, I've dated someone for a good amount of time, and 6 months plus, and they can decide, like, they've decided, oh, well, and this is in the way in the past. This is not something recent, but they've decided, oh, well, I could go missing for a couple of days and not, be respectful and answer Natalie's calls or, answer my calls or whatever. And I could just show up when I feel like it. And, she's gonna jump and take me back. And that happens quite a bit now in the dating world. And that bullshit okey doke is not, is certainly not something that I would ever do now, and certainly not something that I have to worry about now. But that had been something in the past that a lot of people have dealt with people that are kind of showing up, coming in and out of the relationship, and that is so disrespectful. But basically that shows you that, hey, I'll show up for you when I show up for you. I don't really care about you. I have other options that I will probably entertain and treat better than you, and you'll get the crumbs or what's left over from me. And I know I can give you the crumbs or what's left over and get all my needs met because you don't have any self-esteem or you don't have any self-respect. And so therefore I can come to you and treat you unwell or unkind or just downright dirty, and you're going to be appreciative. And while you may want more, I can still keep what I've got going with you for a lot less. Meanwhile, I really try to get myself um, together for the person that I really want over here. And although I'm not good enough for her, so I'll entertain you until I'm good enough for the person that I really want. And then when that person becomes available, or when I feel like I have enough, then I'm gonna, I'll drop you high and dry. And I've had that happen before, way back in the past, in my 20s, where I dated someone and they've been like, "Oh, you're cool," and we were rocking together, and then all of a sudden he found a shiny new woman, right? And this woman is expensive, wants her bills paid and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like, you've been giving me kind of crap treatment, but you want to take this one over here. And he unfortunately, knowing what I know now, I allowed that to a certain degree. I didn't raise the bar of self-respect or raise the bar for respect because I didn't know any better at that time. And so he was delivering breadcrumbs, and I gobbled them up like Pac-Man pellets. And then when he found someone that he liked better, bye bye, bye bye. And not even a second thought, not a care in the world, not even a goodbye, kiss my ass, sorry, see you later. It didn't work out. It was just like, I'm out of here. You don't even deserve anything, because that's how little I think of you. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here pouring into it, thinking that, oh, it's going to turn around. He'll get better. He's kind of struggling right now and blah, 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 blah. And, wondering what he's emotional. He's going through a tough time and, trying to talk it out and, talk about problems and help him problem solve. Oh my goodness. If only I could go back in time, which is why I share that with you guys. Don't waste time talking about problem solving and things like that. When someone is disrespectful to you, believe them the first time and, act on that.